about some of the basic features of the Constitution. To begin with, who was the President of the Constituent Assembly? Dr. Rajendra Prasad. And Dr. Rajendra Prasad was also the first President of India after the India was declared sovereign, democratic and republic. So the Constitution came into force after 3 years of its formulation, finally on 26th January 1950, and that's the reason 26th January is celebrated as the Republic Day in India. Now coming on to the basic 11 features of the Constitution that we would understand for the today's lecture. So the first is India's Constitution is a written and the lengthiest Constitution in the world. So it is considered as the most lengthiest and the most voluminous Constitution in the world. What is the reason for the same? The reason is pretty simple. We have taken the good points from all the constitutions worldwide. So it is an amalgamation of the major documents. For example, residuary powers concept has been taken from Canada. We have the concept of concurrent list coming from Australia, and so on and so forth. Also, India and United States are one of the constitutions that are written. On the other hand, the Constitution of England is unwritten. That means most of the traditions, conventions and practices are unwritten. In our Constitution, originally there were 395 articles, 22 parts and 8 schedules. However, if we talk about the present scenario, there are 470 articles, 12 schedules and 25 parts. That means our Constitution is ever growing, and this is the reason it is also called as a living document, because the amendments are done regularly and these amendments add to the existing Constitution. In our Constitution, 3 pillars are demarcated separately. The executive, which has the function of execution, legislative or lawmaking, and judiciary, which checks whether the laws and the executives are functioning properly or not. Also, our Constitution is important because it is a good synthesis of republican, parliamentary and communist form of government. Now, this was the first pillar that we said, that it is a written and the lengthiest Constitution. The second is it is federal in structure. That means the powers are well divided between the center and the state, but it is unitary in state. That means the power of the center is more than the state. Now, why do we say that power of the center is more than the state? Some of the reasons is that the union list has 99 subjects. Concurrent list has 47 subjects. So first of all, union list has higher number of subjects. Even in the concurrent list, which has 47 subjects, center has more say than the state. The residuary powers are mainly with the center, as in the case of United States of America. In case of emergency, all the powers of the state are taken away by the president, and therefore center becomes powerful, and therefore we say the power of center becomes more. So these are some of the reasons we say center has more power or it is unitary in nature. But why we say it is federal in structure? The powers are divided between the center and the state. Constitution is rigid, it is written, but again, the powers which are divided between the center and the state are black and white between the executive, legislative and judiciary. So all the 3 pillars clearly segmented, judiciary being an independent pillar, and at the center, president appoints the governor. So all of those are some of the important things that make sure that India is a federal structure. However, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said that India as a union is not federal, it is quasi-federal in nature. That means it's not truly federal, but it is a kind of semi-federal in nature. Now, also another important thing, we already talked that India has adopted elements from various countries across India. However, before independence, the Government of India Act came in 1935. If you remember what we studied in history, this Government of India Act 1935 was the act that talked about distribution of powers in 3 lists. Those were the federal list, provincial list and the concurrent list, which are now called as the union list, state list and concurrent list. So federal becomes the union, the provincial becomes the state, and concurrent remains the concurrent, where both the center and the state have their own participation. The third important structure or a feature of our India's constitution is parliamentary form of government. So India, we have a parliamentary form of government. That means the cabinet system both at the center and the state level is there. And as in the England, executive is responsible to the legislature. So legislature is the law-making body and executive is responsible to the legislature. President is the head of executive and prime minister is the head of the legislature. So again, that is important, and all the ministers are responsible to prime minister and parliament. They are not responsible to the president. So the real power lies with the prime minister and the council of ministers and not with the president. So another important feature is of our constitution is we have a parliamentary form of government. We are a secular state. We have fundamental rights and an independent judiciary. Secular state means all of us are equal irrespective of the caste, color, religion, gender and creed. There is no particular religion that a state can follow and all religions are equal before law. So that makes our country a secular state. And then we have fundamental rights. Now fundamental rights like United States of America are granted to the citizens. The 6 fundamental rights are right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom to practice any religion, cultural and educational rights, and right to constitutional remedies. Now these are the 6 fundamental rights that we focus on, and then we do have an independent judiciary. The idea is to safeguard the fundamental rights of an individual citizen and to settle any dispute which arises between the center and the state. If there is any law or legislature law which is passed by the legislature or the executive has some say, that can be declared null and void by the Supreme Court if the fundamental rights of an individual feels compromised. So in that case, Supreme Court can declare that as null and void. So 3 important features: secular state, fundamental rights and independent judiciary. Coming on next is the universal adult franchise and single citizenship. Universal adult franchise says that all people above the years of 18 would be able to cast their vote, and this is under the Article 326. So under the Article 326 of the Constitution, every person above the 18 years of age would be eligible to cast their vote, and this would be based on political equality. We say that under democracy we have a government of the people, for the people, by the people. So all of them must have the right to vote, and if government affects all, it must be responsible for all. That is a very important aspect. The next is single citizenship. Single citizenship here means that since we are talking about the constitution, the federal nature of it, that means we say we are having an Indian citizenship. That means we don't say we are having a Tamil citizenship or a Gujarati citizenship or a UP citizenship. That means to avoid any kind of separatist tendencies, we say that we are a citizen of one country, which is India. So universal adult franchise and single citizenship, another 2 important pillars of the feature of constitution. The next is directive principles of state policy. Under part 4, article 36 to 51, the idea is to provide direction to the state, what and how the things should be. Now these directions are given in 3 forms. They could be socialistic principles, Gandhian principles, or liberal principles. Now each of them have certain list of articles, not relevant at this stage but extremely important. So we have jotted down the list of articles under each principles. So under the DPSPs, the idea is we do follow 3 major principles: the socialist, the Gandhian and the liberal principle. The idea is to give the state the direction how the things should be. So ensure there is social justice, economic justice, equality for all, promote any kind of national and international peace, ensure security and establish the country as a welfare state. The next important pillar of our constitution is sovereign democratic republic. Now what do these 3 terms mean? Sovereign means we are not responsible to any foreign power for understanding our internal policies or any kind of external affairs. and therefore we say we are sovereign. Democratic means the power comes actually from whom? From the common people, and therefore we say it is democratic. And finally we say republic. That means in India the president is elected. It is not like the queen or the king in England, which is a hereditary order. In India, the president is elected and therefore republic. Now, what all these three terms mean are extremely important. Even with senior classes, students get confused. What is the meaning for sovereign, democratic and republic? So, very important concept. Get it crystal clear here itself. The next is the concept of welfare. The last important pillar of the major feature of the Constitution of India is India as a welfare state. That means we do have several directive principles of state policy. The aim is to achieve the welfare of the people. So we say we are not bothered about the internal danger or the external aggression, but the welfare of the people. That means looking after the health, employment, distribution of wealth, maintaining a livelihood for all, promoting agriculture, cottage industry and international cooperation. Definitely internal danger and external invasion are important. We do need to save our citizens from that. But when we talk about a welfare state, we need to see that these basic things are provided to all. For example, through the Manrega scheme of the government, employment opportunities, guaranteed 100 days of employment is provided. Through the Ayushman Bharat, health security is provided. Education for all till primary for the schooling gets free through the government school. So all these are general welfare measures. During the COVID pandemic, free distribution of food grains was done, and this was to ensure adequate means of livelihood. Even before pandemic, we do have the ration scheme, which is through the PDS chain, public distribution system, that this is ensured. So to summarize, we have the 11 fundamental features of the Constitution. So the first one here is the written and the lengthiest constitution that we discussed. The second is that our constitution is federal in nature but unitary in spirit. That means center is more powerful. The third important feature is India's government is a parliamentary form of government, not a presidential form of government. The next is India is a welfare state. We look for the welfare in terms of health, employment, education. The next is providing good guidelines, which is the directive principles of the state policy for the country to function in a specific direction to ensure the social and the economic justice for all. The next two pillars are universal adult franchise, everyone above the age of 18 having the right to vote, and single citizenship, meaning that each state would not give their own citizenship. There would be a common citizenship for all across India. The next is the meaning of the three terms sovereign, democratic and republic. Extremely important, as we have discussed. Sovereign means we are not responsible to any foreign party. Democratic means we are elected from the government is elected from the people, represents the people. And republic means the president is again elected. The president is not as a hierarchy or a hereditary as in case of England, where the queen or the king runs. And the last three important ones are India is a secular state. There is no state religion. We have an independent judiciary and the fundamental rights which are protected through the independent judiciary. So those are some of the important 11 features of our constitution. These 11 features of the constitution are the summary for this lecture. In case you have any questions or doubts, feel free to connect back. Thanks for joining in.